I remember the night when shadows whispered secrets that would forever haunt my soul. In a quiet American town, darkness crept along deserted streets, and an eerie silence was shattered only by the echo of my own hesitant footsteps. It was then that I discovered a macabre signature, precise, deliberate cuts made with an ancient blade. That grim revelation marked the inception of a nightmare, a relentless terror orchestrated by a serial killer whose work would unravel long-buried secrets and force me to confront a past filled with personal tragedy. I always believed Greenwood's gentle facade concealed more than meets the eye. Nestled in the heartland, this small town exuded rustic charm, aging homes with wraparound porches, quiet streets bordered by ancient oaks, and a community bound by tradition. Yet beneath the comforting veneer of neighborly greetings and familiar routines, an undercurrent of unease pulsed quietly. As dusk turned to night, the interplay of fading light and encroaching shadows hinted at secrets waiting to be unearthed, a silent promise that nothing would ever remain as it seemed. That fateful night, while walking a narrow lane lined with time-worn cottages, I encountered a scene that froze my blood. Under the flickering glow of a solitary street lamp lay a body, an innocent soul marred by a series of unnervingly precise incisions. Each cut was a chilling testament to a macabre artistry, deliberate, methodical, and executed with an ancient blade whose history seemed as dark as the act itself. In that moment, the serenity of Greenwood shattered, replaced by the horrifying certainty that a cold, calculating killer stalked these silent streets. Overwhelmed by dread and an urgent need for answers, I knelt beside the grim tableau. The pristine nature of the wounds, so meticulously crafted, whispered of a twisted obsession, a calling card left for those who dared to seek the truth. My heart pounded as memories of unresolved loss and past failures merged with the present terror. That night, the weight of destiny pressed upon me, and I vowed to delve into the mystery behind these sinister cuts, fully aware that each step into the darkness might pull me further from the light of certainty. In the solitude of my office, I found myself haunted by memories of years long past. Every case had its scars, but none left an imprint as indelible as those of my own troubled history. I recalled the loss of a dear one, a wound that never healed, and the relentless search for redemption that had driven me into law enforcement. As I sifted through old photographs and yellowed case files, the ghost of my past emerged, intertwined with the present horror. Each recollection was a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous demons reside within our own memories. The investigation quickly revealed eerie parallels between this recent terror and unresolved threads from my earlier years. Whispers in the community hinted at strange happenings, a series of odd disappearances and murmurs of a curse tied to an influential family whose legacy stretched back generations. In my solitude, I felt the pull of those echoes, as if the case itself was a long-forgotten chapter of my life now demanding to be reopened. The relentless beat of my own heart, synchronized with the rhythmic tapping of rain against my window, only deepened my resolve to uncover the truth. Driven by equal parts duty and personal vendetta, I prepared to re-enter a world I had once vowed to leave behind. Every detail, every scrap of evidence, would now be a clue on a treacherous path leading me back to the crossroads of grief and determination. I knew that to understand the present horror, I must first confront the shadows of my own past. Journey fraught with danger, despair, and the possibility that my own demons might be as relentless as those stalking Greenwood's night. The investigation took a decisive turn the morning after the grisly discovery. I revisited the crime scene, meticulously documenting every minute detail, the arrangement of the victim's body, the subtle pattern of the incisions, and the peculiar placement of personal items left behind. In the quiet solitude of that early hour, I marveled at the killer's precision. Each incision on the victim's skin appeared almost ritualistic, as if the murderer sought to impart a message that transcended the mere act of murder. The ancient blade, though nowhere to be found, loomed large in my thoughts as the embodiment of a long-forgotten tradition of violence. As I combed through police reports and eyewitness accounts, a disturbing pattern began to emerge. Several other incidents, once dismissed as isolated tragedies, now resonated with the same unnerving signature. Clean, almost artistic cuts that bespoke a premeditated and personal vendetta. Local whispers spoke of a curse, a dark legacy haunting the town, a rumor that the influential local family might be entwined with this string of terror. I couldn't shake the feeling that the blade's history was interwoven with secrets deeper than mere criminal intent, hinting at a legacy of blood and betrayal that transcended time. Late that afternoon, while poring over historical records in the town's modest library, I discovered an obscure reference to an ancestral feud and a series of unsolved murders from decades ago. The narrative, steeped in folklore and grim reality, hinted at a connection between the old blade and a ritualistic practice among the town's founding families. It became clear that this was not a random act of violence, but the work of someone who had inherited, or perhaps revived, a legacy of cruelty. As I left the library, the weight of that revelation pressed upon me. In unraveling the mystery of the Crimson Cuts, I was about to step into a labyrinth of ancient grudges and hidden truths. In the days that followed, my investigation led me to the heart of Greenwood's social elite. The influential Carmichael family, long revered for their philanthropy and deep roots in the town's history, suddenly appeared in every whispered conversation and furtive glance. Their stately mansion, with its imposing columns and meticulously maintained gardens, concealed secrets that were as dark as the night itself. I attended community gatherings and discreetly questioned longtime residents, piecing together fragments of rumor and recollection that painted a picture of a family with both wealth and a disturbing past. I recall one rainy evening when I was invited to a private dinner at the Carmichael estate under the guise of routine inquiry. The atmosphere was thick with genteel politeness, yet an undercurrent of tension pulsed beneath each carefully chosen word. As I observed the polished manners and refined conversation, my instincts screamed that there was more beneath the surface. A tapestry of hidden transgressions and unspoken alliances, subtle cues, a lingering gaze here, a hesitant smile there, began to corroborate the chilling possibility that the family's illustrious history was tainted by unspeakable secrets. After leaving the dinner, I wandered the moonlit drive back to my car, replaying the night's conversations in my mind. Each polite dismissal and half-truth nudged me closer to a dark revelation. The Carmichaels were not merely bystanders in this tragedy, but active players in an age-old game of power and revenge. I knew then that to truly understand the pattern of the killings, I would have to confront the guarded hearts of those who prided themselves on their pristine public image, an endeavor that promised danger as much as it did the key to unraveling this mystery. As the body count began to rise, Greenwood's once peaceful nights transformed into a canvas of terror. Each new victim bore the unmistakable mark of the killer's artistry, precise incisions that spoke of an obsession with a bygone era. The town, usually characterized by its quiet dignity and neighborly camaraderie, now found itself gripped by a pervasive fear. I patrolled the fog-laden streets, my senses heightened by the constant whisper of dread, acutely aware that the next macabre discovery could be just around the corner. Every rustle in the darkness and every fleeting shadow set my nerves on edge. My investigation led me deeper into the labyrinth of Greenwood's hidden histories. I conducted late-night interviews with distressed locals, whose trembling voices recounted eerie legends passed down through generations. One elderly man described a mysterious figure seen on moonlit nights near abandoned barns, while a young waitress recalled hushed rumors of a cursed heirloom belonging to the Carmichael lineage. The vivid accounts were laced with both terror and resignation, as if the townsfolk had long accepted that their fates were intertwined with an unstoppable evil. In the midst of this collective despair, I found my own determination hardening into a resolve to expose the truth at any cost. Haunted by both the mounting evidence and the personal demons that gnawed at my sanity, I pressed on despite the suffocating weight of isolation. Every lead, every whispered secret, drew me closer to a confrontation with the unimaginable. The killer's methods were as elegant as they were brutal, a stark reminder that beauty and horror often share a dark, inextricable bond. With each passing night, as the darkness deepened, I could almost hear the silent promise of the next cut, a grim reminder that in Greenwood, terror had taken root and would not be easily dislodged. The investigation had become an obsession that left little room for sleep or solace. In the quiet hours before dawn, I found myself alone with my thoughts, haunted by the ghosts of past failures and the relentless pressure of a case that seemed to demand every ounce of my soul. The faces of the victims, each one a silent testament to the cruelty of the killer, began to merge with memories of my own personal losses. In those moments of solitary reflection, guilt and regret danced hand in hand, urging me to push beyond my own limits, even as they threatened to shatter what remained of my fragile resolve. I began to notice how every new clue seemed to echo a part of my own troubled past. A discarded family heirloom here, a faded photograph there. Each piece of evidence resonated with the bittersweet melody of loss and the relentless passage of time. My journal, once filled with detached observations, now overflowed with anguished confessions and desperate musings on the nature of justice. It became painfully clear that the line between duty and personal vendetta was rapidly blurring. I wondered if, in my relentless pursuit of truth, I was slowly succumbing to the very darkness I sought to expose, a transformation that would render me as lost as the souls I could not save. Yet, even as the burden of guilt threatened to consume me, I clung to the conviction that justice for the victims was paramount. Every sleepless night and every agonizing memory was a step toward uncovering the killer's identity and unmasking the malignant legacy that bound Greenwood's past to its present. My determination was both a beacon and a curse, a reminder that sometimes the cost of seeking truth is the erosion of one's own humanity. In that solitary struggle, I silently vowed that I would not allow my personal demons to derail the mission, even if the darkness within me grew ever more insidious with each passing day. A breakthrough came unexpectedly one cold, rain-soaked evening when I received an anonymous tip, a cryptic message hinting at a secret gathering deep in the outskirts of town. Guided by a mix of intuition and desperation, I ventured into a forgotten part of Greenwood, where dilapidated barns and overgrown fields bore witness to generations of hidden sins. In the eerie silence that enveloped me, every rustle of wind and creak of old wood seemed to murmur long-forgotten secrets. The clue pointed toward a clandestine meeting held by members of the Carmichael family, a gathering shrouded in mystery and whispered rumors of occult rituals. Inside an abandoned farmhouse repurposed for secretive rites, I discovered a cache of incriminating documents and relics, letters, photographs, and even an antique blade that matched the killer's signature. As I pieced together the fragments of evidence, the horrifying truth began to crystallize. The murders were not the work of a lone madman, but part of an elaborate legacy of ritualistic vengeance. The documents revealed dark alliances, intergenerational grudges, and a series of betrayals that stretched back decades. Each piece of evidence was a shard of a larger, more sinister mosaic that implicated not only the Carmichael family, but also other prominent figures in Greenwood, all bound by a mutual pact of silence and complicity. The revelations rocked me to my core. I realized that the killer's gruesome artistry was a manifestation of a deeply rooted cultural curse, one that had been nurtured in the shadows of power and wealth. The anonymous tip had shattered the carefully constructed facade of respectability, exposing a network of secrets that threatened to engulf the town. With every new detail uncovered, the threads of my own past intertwined with the present case, blurring the lines between victim and avenger. I knew that to bring the killer to justice, I would have to confront not only the monstrous force behind the murders, but also the hidden parts of myself that had long been kept in the dark. The inevitable confrontation came on a bitter, moonless night when the town's dread reached its zenith. Armed with the evidence that had slowly pieced together the twisted tapestry of Greenwood's legacy, I tracked the killer to an abandoned industrial complex on the town's edge, a place where the echoes of past sins reverberated off rusted metal and broken windows. As I stepped cautiously into the labyrinthine corridors, every heartbeat pounded like a death knell. The oppressive darkness and the pungent odor of decay set the stage for the final act of a tragedy that had haunted me for far too long. In the cold silence of that forsaken building, I finally came face to face with the architect of terror. The killer, cloaked in shadows and driven by an unfathomable zeal, stood with an aura of eerie calm. For a moment, time seemed to stand still as our eyes met, a silent exchange of pain, fury, and unspoken regret. The confrontation was a brutal dance of wits and will, a struggle where every word, every movement was laden with the weight of countless lost souls. In that harrowing clash, I was forced to confront not only the murderer's deranged rationale, but also the dark reflections of my own past that had followed me into every confrontation. In the end, as the first light of dawn began to break through the shattered windows, the final truth was laid bare. The killer's reign of terror was ended, but at a cost that would haunt Greenwood for generations to come. I walked away with scars, both visible and hidden, and the grim understanding that the line between justice and vengeance is often blurred beyond recognition. Even now, as I recount these memories, I cannot escape the lingering echo of that final, fateful cut, a reminder that in the shadow of the crimson blade, no one remains untouched by the darkness. In the heart of a sprawling metropolis, shadows conceal secrets darker than the neon glow. A series of ritualistic murders has gripped the city, each crime scene marked by cryptic messages carved with chilling precision. I, an ambitious journalist, determined to unearth the truth, find myself plunged into a labyrinth of clues, conspiracy theories, and corruption that reaches the highest echelons of power. Every revelation draws me closer to a truth so harrowing it may cost me my life. It began on a rain-drenched night when I received an anonymous tip about a gruesome murder on the city's outskirts. Arriving at the scene, I was met with a tableau of eerie precision, a meticulously staged body lying beneath harsh streetlights, its skin bearing ritualistic cuts and a series of cryptic symbols etched into the pavement. The air was heavy with foreboding, and as I observed every detail, a shiver of dread coursed through me. This wasn't a random act of violence. It was a calculated message, a signature of a killer who reveled in leaving puzzles behind. Back at the scene, forensic teams worked under the dim glow of emergency lights while officers cordoned off the area. I scribbled notes furiously, determined to capture every nuance of this macabre performance. Witnesses whispered about unusual sounds and fleeting shadows before the tragedy, heightening the atmosphere of terror. It quickly became apparent that the killer's ritual was not only personal but also meant to intimidate a city already reeling from urban decay and mounting corruption. That night, as I stood under the relentless rain, I resolved to follow every clue, no matter how obscure. The cryptic messages carved at the scene beckoned me into a dark maze of secrets. Even as the city's skyline loomed in the distance, a glittering facade hiding its inner rot, I knew that the deeper I delved, the closer I would come to unraveling a conspiracy that could shatter everything I believed in. In the days that followed, I pored over police reports and forensic evidence, attempting to decode the symbols left behind at the crime scene. Each mark seemed to echo ancient rites, a blend of modern cruelty and archaic ritual. My investigation led me to a local expert in symbology who explained that the carvings hinted at a twisted belief in rebirth through blood. As I listened to his theories, the realization dawned on me. The killer was not merely acting out a personal vendetta, but was performing a ritualistic act designed to communicate a larger, more sinister message. I spent hours retracing the killer's steps, scouring old neighborhoods and abandoned warehouses where whispers of past atrocities lingered. In dimly lit back alleys and forgotten corners of the city, I encountered frightened locals who recalled similar symbols from urban legends. Their stories spoke of a secret society that once operated in the shadows, manipulating power from behind a veneer of respectability. Each narrative piece deepened the mystery, suggesting that the murders were intertwined with a legacy of ritualistic retribution. As my investigation advanced, I began receiving anonymous messages warning me to stop digging. Instead of deterring me, these threats only fueled my determination. The line between myth and reality blurred as I uncovered connections between the murder scenes and historical accounts of clandestine ceremonies. Every new clue pointed to a web of corruption and occult practices that reached into the highest corridors of the city's power, a revelation that promised danger at every turn. My relentless pursuit of the truth led me into the heart of the metropolis's darkest underbelly, a maze of backstreets, underground clubs, and forgotten relics of the past. In one such hidden venue, I met an informant who claimed to have witnessed the killer in action. His account was fragmented and laced with fear, yet it corroborated the existence of a shadowy network operating in parallel with the city's official institutions. He described coded symbols, secret meetings, and an enigmatic leader whose influence permeated every level of society. During a covert night interview in a seedy diner, I pieced together snippets of information from multiple sources. A pattern emerged. Each victim had been connected, however distantly, to influential circles tainted by greed and power. I began mapping out the killer's potential targets and noticed that the ritualistic killings served as a grim form of retribution against those who exploited the vulnerable. This realization sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't merely about terror. It was about exposing a festering corruption that had plagued the city for decades. As I compiled my findings, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The city's familiar faces took on a sinister cast, and even the glowing neon signs appeared to pulse with hidden menace. Each clue, each coded message, propelled me deeper into a labyrinth where trust was a luxury and danger lurked behind every corner. With my recorder in hand and a notebook full of secrets, I braced myself for the next step in a journey that promised to unravel more than just a series of crimes. It would expose the dark heart of a society in decay. Night after night, I roamed the urban sprawl, guided by the flickering neon signs that masked the city's true nature. In the pulse of downtown, where skyscrapers towered and power brokers mingled in exclusive clubs, I encountered a stark contrast between the glittering surface and the grim undercurrents below. It was in these hidden crevices of the metropolis that I found further evidence of the killer's disturbing work, a deliberate choreography of murder scenes that seemed to challenge the very foundations of the city's elite. A chance encounter with a retired detective provided me with invaluable insights. He spoke of past cases where the modus operandi echoed the current spree, yet those investigations were mysteriously shelved. His recollections hinted at a cover-up that spanned decades, implicating individuals who wielded significant influence. This revelation added another layer of complexity to my investigation. Not only was I chasing a deranged killer, but I was also wading through a system that had long been compromised by corruption. In the labyrinth of bustling streets and upscale bars, I attended secretive gatherings under assumed identities, listening intently for any mention of the mysterious society rumored to be behind the ritual. Every whispered conversation, every half-observed gesture, suggested that the killer's work was not an isolated phenomenon. It was the visible tip of an iceberg of conspiracies. The neon veil of the city was slowly lifting, revealing a network of alliances that blurred the lines between criminality and institutional power, forcing me to confront a truth far more dangerous than I had ever imagined. The deeper I delved into the investigation, the more I realized that every thread I pulled led to an intricate tapestry of deceit. Documents obtained through discreet sources began to reveal financial irregularities, secret meetings, and hush-hush contracts between seemingly respectable figures. I uncovered evidence that implicated major corporations and political figures in a web of corruption, all linked to the occult symbolism left at the murder scenes. The killer's actions, it appeared, were a brutal form of retribution, aimed at those who exploited power for personal gain. Late one evening, I attended a clandestine meeting in a nondescript office building in the financial district. The atmosphere was thick with tension, and hushed voices discussed deals that could topple careers. As I eavesdropped, I recorded conversations that hinted at a far-reaching network, a secret cabal whose influence spanned not only business but also government. The realization struck me hard. The ritualistic murders were a public spectacle, designed to draw attention to hidden atrocities, a sinister way of forcing the corrupt into the light. The more I uncovered, the more perilous my path became, threatening. Messages and anonymous calls began to disrupt my investigation. Despite the mounting danger, I pressed on, driven by a deep-seated need for justice. With each new piece of evidence, the conspiracy grew more elaborate, and I found myself questioning who I could trust. The city's polished facade now appeared as a cunning disguise, concealing a festering rot that had been allowed to thrive for too long. As the stakes escalated, I started receiving warnings. Anonymous letters, mysterious phone calls, even fleeting glances from strangers that hinted at unseen eyes. Every step I took seemed shadowed by a constant, unrelenting presence. I began to feel that my pursuit of the truth had turned me into a target, not only of the deranged killer but also of those desperate to keep their secrets buried. It was a dangerous dance, one where every misstep could be fatal. One late night, while reviewing new evidence in the relative solitude of my apartment, I sensed someone was watching me. The sound of a creaking floorboard shattered the silence, and for a heartbeat, my world froze. I grabbed my phone and dialed a trusted contact, a retired investigator known for his uncompromising pursuit of justice. His urgent tone over the phone confirmed my worst fears. The network I was exposing was more powerful and ruthless than I had imagined. He warned me that my every move was being tracked and that the killer might not be working alone. The threat was now personal. I was forced to navigate a treacherous path where alliances were fleeting, and every shadow held potential danger. With the weight of the conspiracy pressing in, I steeled myself for what lay ahead. The more I learned, the more it became clear that my mission was not just about solving a series of murders. It was about unmasking a system that had corrupted the very soul of the city. And in that dark reflection, I saw the glimmer of a fate that could consume me whole if I wasn't careful. Under the relentless pressure of mounting evidence and persistent threats, I reached a breaking point. My days blurred into a harrowing series of investigations, secret meetings, and close calls with danger. Each new revelation forced me to confront uncomfortable truths, not only about the pervasive corruption lurking in high offices, but also about my own vulnerabilities. I felt the weight of every life lost, every injustice committed, and each step closer to the killer's identity only deepened my resolve. Desperate for a breakthrough, I followed a lead that took me deep into the bowels of the city, a derelict warehouse rumored to be the meeting place of the conspirators. There, amidst crumbling walls and the persistent echo of dripping water, I uncovered a hidden room filled with documents, photographs, and encrypted files. The evidence was overwhelming: records of illicit transactions, secret alliances, and a list of names that spanned influential sectors. The killer's message was clear, a cry for justice against those who had long operated above the law. But as I attempted to piece together the final parts of this dark puzzle, the danger escalated to an almost unbearable level. I narrowly escaped an ambush that left no doubt that I was treading on perilous ground. With every passing moment, the net tightened around me, and I could feel the icy grip of fate drawing nearer. It was in that crucible of fear and determination that I realized the true cost of the truth, and that exposing it might require me to sacrifice everything I held dear. The climax of my investigation unfolded on a stormy night that felt as if nature itself mourned the impending reckoning. Armed with irrefutable evidence and haunted by the echoes of every life lost, I arranged a final meeting with a high-ranking whistleblower who promised to reveal the conspiracy's innermost secrets. In a dimly lit parking garage beneath the city's towering skyline, our paths converged, and the truth began to unravel like a tightly wound thread. The whistleblower, trembling yet resolute, disclosed damning information linking the ritualistic murders directly to those at the pinnacle of power. In that fateful encounter, as thunder roared overhead and the rain battered the cold concrete, I found myself face to face with the orchestrator of this dark symphony, a man whose calm demeanor belied the monstrous acts he had sanctioned. The confrontation was as surreal as it was harrowing, a clash of ideologies and wills under the indifferent gaze of a city that had long turned a blind eye to corruption. In a moment of shocking clarity, the full extent of the conspiracy was laid bare, its roots entwined with greed, betrayal, and a lust for power that knew no bounds. With the first light of dawn piercing through the storm clouds, the final act unfolded. The killer's reign of terror and the web of corruption were exposed to the public, igniting outrage and demanding accountability. Though the battle had been won, the scars, both personal and societal, would linger. As I penned the last lines of my report, I heard what could only be described as the final scream of the dead, a haunting reminder that in our quest for truth, the cost is often paid in blood and sacrifice. Deep in the isolated heartland of America, where endless fields and quiet roads conceal old secrets, a series of brutal murders shatters the fragile peace of a small town. Each victim is mysteriously tied to an unsolved crime from decades past, and a ruthless killer exacts his vengeance with cruel precision. In the midst of the terror, one solitary investigator, haunted by personal demons and a dark past, must step into the shadows, where justice and madness intertwine, risking everything to uncover the truth. On a chilly autumn evening, as the sun sank behind barren fields, Sheriff Daniel Reed arrived at the latest crime scene on the outskirts of the small town of Ravens Hollow. The body of a local man, arranged with a macabre precision, lay beneath a flickering street lamp. Deep, deliberate incisions marked the victim's skin, and cryptic symbols were etched into the damp pavement. The air was thick with an unspoken dread, a message left behind that spoke of old wrongs and a sinister quest for retribution. As the local deputies cordoned off the area, whispers among frightened onlookers hinted at a legacy of unsolved crimes that had long haunted the community. Daniel, whose rugged features bore the weight of personal tragedies, knelt beside the victim. Every detail, the precise nature of the cuts, the positioning of the body, and the eerie inscriptions seemed to point to a ritualistic vengeance. In his mind, memories of an unresolved case from his early days in law enforcement resurfaced, as if urging him to confront buried secrets. The evidence, though scant, was disturbingly consistent with past murders that had been dismissed as random acts of violence. Determined, he vowed to uncover the pattern behind these brutal killings, even if it meant delving into his own haunted past. As the night deepened and the rain began to fall, Daniel left the scene with a heavy heart and a renewed determination. The killer's signature was clear, a message written in blood and etched into history. With the echoes of the victim's silent plea lingering in the night air, he realized that the darkness awakening in Raven's Hollow was only just beginning. In a chilly autumn evening, as the sun sank behind barren fields, Sheriff Daniel Reed arrived at the latest crime scene on the outskirts of the small town of Raven's Hollow. The body of a local man, arranged with a macabre precision, lay beneath a flickering street lamp. Deep, deliberate incisions marked the victim's skin, and cryptic symbols were etched into the damp pavement. The air was thick with an unspoken dread, a message left behind that spoke of old wrongs and a sinister quest for retribution. As the local deputies cordoned off the area, whispers among frightened onlookers hinted at a legacy of unsolved crimes that had long haunted the community. Daniel, whose rugged features bore the weight of personal tragedies, knelt beside the victim. Every detail, the precise nature of the cuts, the positioning of the body, and the eerie inscriptions seemed to point to a ritualistic vengeance. In his mind, memories of an unresolved case from his early days in law enforcement resurfaced, as if urging him to confront buried secrets. The evidence, though scant, was disturbingly consistent with past murders that had been dismissed as random acts of violence. Determined, he vowed to uncover the pattern behind these brutal killings, even if it meant delving into his own haunted past. As the night deepened and the rain began to fall, Daniel left the scene with a heavy heart and a renewed determination. The killer's signature was clear, a message written in blood and etched into history. With the echoes of the victim's silent plea lingering in the night air, he realized that the darkness awakening in Raven's Hollow was only just beginning. In a chilly autumn evening, as the sun sank behind barren fields, Sheriff Daniel Reed arrived at the latest crime scene on the outskirts of the small town of Raven's Hollow. The body of a local man, arranged with a macabre precision, lay beneath a flickering street lamp. Deep, deliberate incisions marked the victim's skin, and cryptic symbols were etched into the damp pavement. The air was thick with an unspoken dread, a message left behind that spoke of old wrongs and a sinister quest for retribution. As the local deputies cordoned off the area, whispers among frightened onlookers hinted at a legacy of unsolved crimes that had long haunted the community. Daniel, whose rugged features bore the weight of personal tragedies, knelt beside the victim. Every detail, the precise nature of the cuts, the positioning of the body, and the eerie inscriptions seemed to point to a ritualistic vengeance. In his mind, memories of an unresolved case from his early days in law enforcement resurfaced, as if urging him to confront buried secrets. The evidence, though scant, was disturbingly consistent with past murders that had been dismissed as random acts of violence. Determined, he vowed to uncover the pattern behind these brutal killings, even if it meant delving into his own haunted past. As the night deepened and the rain began to fall, Daniel left the scene with a heavy heart and a renewed determination. The killer's signature was clear, a message written in blood and etched into history. With the echoes of the victim's silent plea lingering in the night air, he realized that the darkness awakening in Raven's Hollow was only just beginning. On a chilly autumn evening, as the sun sank behind barren fields, Sheriff Daniel Reed arrived at the latest crime scene on the outskirts of the small town of Raven's Hollow. The body of a local man, arranged with a macabre precision, lay beneath a flickering street lamp. Deep, deliberate incisions marked the victim's skin, and cryptic symbols were etched into the damp pavement. The air was thick with an unspoken dread, a message left behind that spoke of old wrongs and a sinister quest for retribution. As the local deputies cordoned off the area, whispers among frightened onlookers hinted at a legacy of unsolved crimes that had long haunted the community. Daniel, whose rugged features bore the weight of personal tragedies, knelt beside the victim. Every detail, the precise nature of the cuts, the positioning of the body, and the eerie inscriptions seemed to point to a ritualistic vengeance. In his mind, memories of an unresolved case from his early days in law enforcement resurfaced, as if urging him to confront buried secrets. The evidence, though scant, was disturbingly consistent with past murders that had been dismissed as random acts of violence. Determined, he vowed to uncover the pattern behind these brutal killings, even if it meant delving into his own haunted past. As the night deepened and the rain began to fall, Daniel left the scene with a heavy heart and a renewed determination. The killer's signature was clear, a message written in blood and etched into history. With the echoes of the victim's silent plea lingering in the night air, he realized that the darkness awakening in Raven's Hollow was only just beginning. As Daniel's investigation progressed, a tangled web of deceit began to emerge from the shadows of Raven's Hollow. In hushed conversations with town elders and whispers gathered from the local bar, he uncovered evidence of a secret network that had once thrived on power and exploitation. The unsolved crimes of decades past were linked by a common thread, a network of influential individuals who had manipulated events in their favor, leaving behind a legacy of bloodshed and betrayal. Each murder was a calculated act of retribution, targeting those who had long evaded justice. Daniel's inquiries led him to the corridors of power in the community, where he discovered that some of the town's most respected figures harbored dark secrets. Financial records, hidden correspondence, and clandestine meetings pointed to a conspiracy that spanned generations. The evidence was damning. The killer's meticulous method of execution was a symbolic message aimed at exposing a history of corruption. Yet, every step Daniel took brought him closer to danger, as powerful forces moved swiftly to protect their interests. In a tense meeting with a reluctant insider at a local diner, Daniel learned that the old crimes were far more extensive than anyone had dared to admit. The insider, trembling as he recounted long-forgotten scandals, hinted at an unholy alliance between criminals and respectable citizens, a pact sealed by silence and mutual benefit. The revelations shook Daniel to his core. With each new piece of evidence, he realized that the web of deceit was so intricately woven that even the slightest misstep could cost him everything. His mission had become not only about catching a killer, but also about unmasking a hidden world where justice had long been forsaken. Armed with the fragments of evidence he had painstakingly gathered, Daniel ventured deeper into the murky underbelly of Raven's Hollow. His investigation led him to abandoned warehouses, derelict barns, and secret meeting spots where the whispers of the past still echoed. Each location held a piece of the puzzle, a relic of a time when sins were committed in the dead of night and justice was meted out in silence. The atmosphere was thick with menace as he navigated these forgotten places, the chill of the unknown settling deep within his bones. During one fateful night, Daniel discovered a hidden room in a crumbling building on the outskirts of town. Inside, he found old ledgers, cryptic maps, and photographs that connected the current murders to the unsolved cases of the past. The room was a shrine to a legacy of vengeance, a silent testament to the long arm of retribution that had finally been awakened. Each document and image reinforced the horrifying truth. The killer was methodically targeting those with ties to a historic crime, a crime that had laid the foundation for the town's darkest secrets. As he gathered the evidence, Daniel felt an ever-present weight on his shoulders. The deeper he delved, the more the boundaries between hunter and hunted blurred. Every step forward seemed to trigger unseen eyes that followed him through the labyrinth of shadows. The investigation was no longer a solitary quest for truth. It had become a dangerous dance with forces that thrived in secrecy. Yet, despite the mounting peril, Daniel pressed on, determined to expose the killer's identity and bring to light the hidden sins of Raven's Hollow, even if it meant venturing into the very heart of darkness. The relentless pursuit of truth began to take a toll on Daniel, whose mind now teetered on the edge between resolute determination and creeping madness. The gruesome details of the murders and the weight of his own past failures converged, creating an overwhelming pressure that gnawed at his sanity. Each night, as he replayed the haunting images and cryptic clues in his mind, the line between reality and nightmare blurred. In his solitude, he began to question whether the darkness he chased was merely external, or also a reflection of his own inner demons. Haunted by sleepless nights and tormented by visions of the victim's silent screams, Daniel found himself at a crossroads. The investigation had dredged up painful memories of a case that once defined his career and shattered his spirit. As the memories grew more vivid, so too did the realization that confronting the killer might force him to face the darkest parts of himself. His thoughts spiraled into a vortex of regret, anger, and despair. The once clear purpose of serving justice became entangled with a desperate need for redemption, a need to silence the ghosts that had plagued him for years. In the throes of his internal battle, Daniel's resolve wavered and he teetered on the brink of succumbing to madness. Yet, even as the darkness threatened to overwhelm him, a spark of determination remained. He knew that to end the cycle of bloodshed, he must overcome his own inner turmoil and push forward. With each step, he steeled himself against the encroaching madness, understanding that the final confrontation with the killer would demand not only physical courage, but also the strength to face his most personal fears. On a cold, storm-lashed night that seemed to mirror the turbulent state of his soul, Daniel prepared for the final confrontation. The pieces of the puzzle had finally come together: a damning dossier of evidence, secret testimonies, and a trail of blood leading directly to the killer's lair. In a derelict building at the edge of Raven's Hollow, where time appeared to have stopped and shadows danced in the flicker of failing lights, Daniel met the mastermind behind the brutal spree. The ensuing confrontation was a clash of wills as much as it was a battle between light and darkness. The killer, a figure both enigmatic and terrifying, revealed a chilling calmness as he justified his acts as a form of retribution. Their exchange was punctuated by raw emotions, a torrent of anger, sorrow, and twisted ideology. In that charged moment, as thunder roared overhead and rain pounded the broken windows, Daniel realized that this encounter was the culmination of everything he had fought for. Justice and vengeance had become indistinguishable in the charged air between them. When the first light of dawn broke through the storm, it illuminated a scene of bittersweet resolution. The killer was subdued, and the dark network of old sins was exposed to the light of day. Yet, as Daniel stood amidst the wreckage of shattered illusions, he knew that the victory had come at a tremendous personal cost. The scars, both seen and unseen, would forever mark him and the community of Raven's Hollow. In the silence that followed, the final echo of vengeance resounded, a reminder that the path to justice is often paved with sacrifice, and that sometimes the shadows hold truths too painful to forget. Thank you very much for watching today's video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to stay informed when the next video comes out. And tell me, what did you think of today's stories? See you in the next video.